tendency toward immediate gratification. By the time it was formally established in 1884, there were 25 buildings on the site, most of them housing businesses whose owners, sensing the ample opportunity that came with living near the railroad, had simply picked up their homes and office buildings and relocated to Modesto from nearby Paradise City or Tuolumne City. Modesto took its time to become a metropolis. It wouldn't hit 100,000 residents until the 1980s. But as the town grew, it took its civic pride seriously, and by the early 1900s was boasting of its residents' well-manicured lawns and colorful rose bushes, as well as its commitment to education and culture. In 1912, its proud residents erected an enormous arch to welcome visitors as they bounced down 9th Street in their automobiles, a new and exotic invention that no one was quite sure was going to catch on, and passed under the city's motto in blazing incandescent lights: water, wealth, contentment, health. It was a motto as straightforward as its residents. By the time George Lucas Sr. arrived in Modesto with his mother and sister in 1929, its population had grown to just slightly under 14,000, sprawled out across a well-organized series of flat grids typical of Western towns. As the United States began its slump into the Great Depression, George Sr. split his time between classes at Modesto High School and a job as an apprentice to a mechanic in a typewriter repair shop, already plying a trade at the age of 16. In the 1930 census, both Maud and Eileen listed their occupation as none, making George the lone and much-needed source of support for his sister and widowed mother. Earning a living, then, was a responsibility George Sr. took seriously. There would be no frittering away his time, no goofing off, no daydreaming. George Sr. decided he'd study law and become a lawyer, and applied himself in high school to getting good grades. And yet, at Modesto High School, the serious young man, stiff-backed with a head of dark wavy hair and a rail-thin body made for buttoned-up suits, fell in love at first sight with a girl in his history class and immediately informed his mother that he was going to marry her, even if he didn't actually know her name yet. After a bit of prying, George Sr. learned he'd been smitten by Dorothy Baumberger, a young woman who belonged to one of Modesto's oldest and most prominent families. That their famous son could later declare himself a fourth-generation Californian was due entirely to his pedigree as a Baumberger, a family whose roots in America predated the Declaration of Independence. For generations, the Baumbergers had been quietly making the investments in real estate that would give their family both wealth and reputation. By the 1900s, various branches of Baumbergers owned and managed property across the San Joaquin Valley, and Dorothy's father, Paul, had additional interests in seed companies and car dealerships, making them one of the valley's best-known and most prosperous families. The comings and goings of Baumbergers would be a regular topic on the society pages of the Modesto Bee and News Herald. Dorothy was a dark-eyed and dark-haired beauty, wispy and somewhat fragile, but a good catch, and she and George Sr. were a good-looking, popular, and utterly devoted couple. In their senior year, they were co-starring in the class play, a 3-act comedy called Nothing But the Truth, and George would serve as class president with Dorothy as his vice president. After graduation, they briefly attended Modesto Business College together, where George joined the Delta Sigma fraternity while Dorothy continued to be active with the Phi Gamma Girls Club. Soon, George took a job with Lee Brothers, one of Modesto's newer but smaller stationery stores, serving customers out of a cramped shop on 10th Street. To his surprise, he found he actually liked the stationery business. It was pure dumb luck, he said later. I wasn't even sure what stationery meant. His plans for studying law were abandoned. On August 3, 1933, George Sr. and Dorothy were married at the local Methodist Episcopal Church. Given the Baumberger connection, it was hailed as a wedding of widespread interest by the local newspaper, which dutifully reported on the planning and mailing of invitations to the ceremony. George was 20, Dorothy 18. and the young couple set off on their way, with the nation officially in the midst of...
To keep listening to this audiobook for free, click the link in the description. It will take you to a free Audible trial where you can listen to this and many other books for free for 30 days.